Namaskaram VasanthiMā. Namaskaram one and all. On this Good Friday, the Diamond Jubilee wedding anniversary of VasanthiMā's parents and my maternal grandparents, śrīmati valli-bāi-ammāl and Sri ārcot paśu-pati venkat-āchala-pati. VasanthiMā is delighted to present to you a song frequently sung by her dad, my beloved grandpa, to whom I owe all of my spiritual foundation in its entirety. I have written an ode to him on the occasion of his birthday last year. That PDF is available for those of you who would like to have. Do write to me. Another personal connection, apart from my grandpa, is that my dad, whom I used to fondly call Pappaji Master, and the composer of today's song, vallalār, were both blessed with the divine vision of the principle of su-brahmanyā. Nothing but our own valor and courage to muster the support of all our passionate aggression to defeat our inertial lethargy and laziness, thus being endowed with the first three of the four puruśārthās in the form of dharmā or veil, arthā or devayāni, and kāma or valli, and finally seeking the fourth puruśārthā of moksha or liberation from the seemingly never-ending cycle of birth and death. This principle of su-brahmanyā, whose vision both my Pappaji master and Guruji vallalār had, is centered at every one of our swadhisthana chakra, eagerly waiting to be unraveled like a blossoming lotus, a global dispeller of darkness, Vishwa Guru, Venerable Thiru, enlightening, grace-showering arut-prakāsha, Honorable Philanthropist vallalār, and occupant of our conscious space, chid-ambara, and thus an ecstatic emblem, rāmalinga, manifested himself on our beautiful planet Earth. Yes, I'm talking of the Vishwa Guru Thiru arut-prakāsha vallalār chid-ambara rāmalinga pillai, a global dispeller of darkness, venerable, enlightening, grace-showering, honorable philanthropist, an occupant of our conscious space, and thus an ecstatic emblem, manifested himself on our beautiful planet Earth. Of course, in the timeless Punya Bhumi of Bharat, Mera Bharat Mahan, and in the humanity paralleling ancient culture of Tamil Nadu 198 years ago, yes, just less than 200, he transformed himself into an eternal light body 147 years back, yes, just 3 less than 150. So we will shortly have the privilege of celebrating his bicentennial Jayanti, that is the 200th birthday, on October the 5th, 2023. And also, immediately after that, the 150th anniversary of vallalār's specially relativistic enlightenment. Yes. General theory of relativity, special theory of relativity, Albert Einstein. Yes. 150th anniversary of vallalār's specially relativistic enlightenment on January the 30th, 2024. As some of you might recall, vallalār was directly referred to in our very channel, Śrīmati Vasanthikumari Sampath channel, quite recently, maybe in February, just about a month back, right in the middle of the song Eppadi Paadinaro of Kaviyogi Maharshi Sri Shuddhananda Bharati, rendered of course by VasanthiMā, not me. Vallalār was one amongst the many towering spiritual singers that Shuddhanandaji wanted to emulate and say, however they sang, I also want to sing like that. Right? So vallalār was the subject of that song. Today's song, on the other hand, is not written on vallalār, but written by him. Appā, Naan VENDudal, by arut-perun-jyōthi rāmalinga vallalār in pūrvi-kalyāNi ragam. That is something which precedes even progress. That kind of a melody. What would suit it as the rhythm for that to go along with that? Cāpu talam, as if it's a mudra, is actually the first stanza of his virally popular Vallal, Vallal, vallalār, his virally popular arut-pa, Thiru holy, arut grace, pa padal song. So his holy graceful songs are collected together as arut-pa, a big set of volumes. In that we are talking about just a sample today that VasanthiMā is going to give us. Right? So this song, that is Appā Naan VENDudal by arut-perun-jyōthi rāmalinga vallalār in pūrvi-kalyāNi ragam and cāpu talam, is actually the first stanza of his virally popular Arut-pa, 6th book, part 2, 35th poem. In the English version, maybe same numbers in the Tamil version too. But what most singers of this song themselves don't realize, leave alone us listeners, even singers, they've learnt it through a lot of effort, and of course our pranams to them, but they just sing it without recognizing or realizing that the simple sounding song, yes, it's in almost like colloquial Tamil, not in the ancient Sangam Tamil, which even many of today's Tamilians don't seem to understand, but a very simple sounding language. But this song, in spite of that simplicity, and in fact probably because of that simplicity, is actually, and in fact entirely, an appeal from our BMI toolkit. I keep referring to this body, mind and intellect So you better get used to this abbreviation BMI. It will be used many a times in this discourse. And in fact, I've used it in previous discourses and will continue to use in other discourses, because this is all that we really have to help us, our body, our mind, and our intellect. B, M, and I, to help our real self, the Atma, the soul, right? So, what most singers of this song themselves don't realize is that this simple sounding song is actually and in fact entirely an appeal from our BMI toolkit to the real us, namely the self. Our BMI toolkit addresses us. Yes, the body talks to the soul, the mind talks to our soul, and the intellect talks to the soul. The soul is the real I, the real we. And to that, all of our bodies, minds, and intellects are conversing with. And that's the entire song. That's what it's all about. Unfortunately, the singers don't know about it. You and I know. When we listen, we'll make sure that it's not VasanthiMā who's singing and we who are listening, but actually each of our own bodies are singing it, each of our own minds are singing it, each of our own intellects are singing it. And whom are they singing it to? Our self, real self, true self, the Atma, the soul, right? So this is an appeal from our BMI toolkit to the real us, namely the self. Our BMI toolkit addresses us as what? Pappaji master, and as our own father, as we are indeed the creators every moment and recreators every other moment of each of our own universes, which of course include our BMIs too. A universe means all inclusive. So where will the body, mind, and intellect go, even though they are temporary? Albeit being temporary, the BMIs are included in those universes that you create, that I create, and we keep creating and recreating this every moment. And that word recreate is very important because it's like recreation. This is a play, this is a leela, a game that we are enjoying ourselves with, right? So we create this, and therefore it's our child, right? So how will we address the child, and how will the child address us? This is what is the beauty over here, right? So an appeal from our BMI toolkit, body, mind, intellect toolkit, to the real us, namely the self. So our body, mind, intellect toolkit addresses us as Pappaji master and as our own father, as we are indeed the creators every moment and recreators every other moment of each of our own universes, which of course include our body, minds, and intellects. Albeit temporarily, our BMIs continue requesting ourselves, let our humble appeal be heard by you and granted. Despite being temporary tools, the body, mind, and intellect of genuine seekers, sadhaks like you and me, like us, are clearly understood, well taken care of, and utilized efficiently and effectively. Yes, we are not the body, we are not the mind, we are not the intellect, or rather, we are not only the body, we are not only the mind, we are not only the intellect, we are the radiant Atman, soft, delicious, white, pure, beautiful as the coconut fruit inside the hard coconut shell. So ride on us as you ride on your vahana, we say to our Atma, na deho, na mano, na buddhi, Satchit-ananda atmoham. Satchidananda atmoham. Eternal as I really am, and ephemeral as these three, the body, mind, and intellect are. I still know that these three, body, mind, and intellect, can be very useful, not only for worldly affairs, but even for spiritual journeys. If and only if we understand them well, we understand the body well, understand the mind well, understand the intellect well, and take care of them properly and utilize them efficiently and effectively for the purposes that they are meant for, then they can be phenomenal. And that's what we shall strive to do as long as these temporary tools of body, mind, and intellect last. So thus our body, mind, and intellect want to soulfully love whom? All the other bodies, minds, and intellects. My body, my mind, and my intellect wants to love those of yours, and yours wants to love those of me. Not just of the viewers, but of all human beings, irrespective of nationality, gender, caste, creed, linguistics, etc. But not restricting only to human beings either, but those with our arivu, that means a sixth sense. Yes, we know of the five senses: the sight, the hearing, the smelling, the tasting, and the touching or feeling. There's a sixth sense, right? That is the sense which is making us true to our being, our living. That's why we are called being. And this sixth sense is not restricted to human beings, my dear friend. All human beings, nay, all living beings. And how do we want to love them? Not just saying I love you, you love me. These three words of I love you, 143 code numbers for that, or whatever it might be in the current generation. No, not just that. There's a testimony expression for that love, right? And one of the best ways to express that love is compassionate service. Yes, our BMIs, especially of the sadhaks, want to serve the other BMIs, right? You will see all of that in today's song. I'm actually translating that song. No, interpreting that song in an Advaitic tone as always. So we the seekers, bodies, minds, and intellects want to go places to where every nook and corner of this amazing planet that's been bestowed upon us, planet Earth. Had the privilege of going to 46 countries and almost all the states of India. But that's not all that there is. There's so much more, right? Not in terms of these numbers. No, not even merely as tourists like how I did in the past, embarking upon sightseeing, but to musically glorify ourself. Yes, the Atma or soul, and to demonstrate our real selves, selfless grace. The play on words, our real selves, selfless grace. Arut. As abundantly and obviously evident as space, as grace, as space. See the poetic nature even in the English interpretation of this amazing melody. So what is to be demonstrated? Our real selves, selfless grace, as abundantly and as obviously evident as space. Yes, the Akasha element or the Gagana element, the fifth of the Panchabhutas, the subtlest of them all, is there everywhere. And yet, we can't see them, hear them, smell them, taste them, touch them, but we still know it's there. It's so obviously evident. It's abundant as well. Same way grace is also the arul, right? Of course, arul, when used along with something else, becomes arut. That's the beauty of Tamil, how the words modify their endings to be added as prefixes to other words, right? So, selfless grace, evident as space, yet invisible to the senses. How do our BMI want to show off ourselves? Grace, the grace of ourself. It can't show it off by itself. It's our body which has to show it off, our mind which is to show it off, intellect which has to show it off, and showing off is not always bad if done with the appropriate intention. So it's also why you're doing it and how you're doing it which matters, not just what you're doing. So nothing is good or bad by itself. The whys and the hows determine the nature of those activities, thoughts and speeches, right? So how do our BMI want to show off ourselves grace? Indeed, only way, by engaging in compassionate service. Seva, seva, seva. Had such amazing experiences of seva throughout my life, especially in Atlanta with the wonderful organization called Hands on Atlanta, at old age homes, destitute homes, the homes for the homeless, and for the children who are not going to schools, etc. So engaging in such compassionate service through the recognition that the entire creation is our own child. I'm a parent to the entire universe. Not just because I'm loving, sharing, caring and compassionate, but because I create the entire universe every moment and recreate it every other moment. So the natural collateral outcome of this is that I'm loving, sharing, caring and compassionate. Those things need not be taught to me. They come to me naturally because I recognize that I'm a parent to the entire universe. So do all sadhaks, and of course the rishis, the seers, right? So through the engaging in compassionate service, how? The body, mind and intellect should engage in compassionate service all the time. But how? Through the recognition that the entire creation is our own child. So it's but natural to do it. It's not like I'm doing a favor for you. No, you don't do favors for your own children, biological children that is. So why would you do favors to those who are your real children, not just biological? That's the entire universe, right? So recognize that the entire creation is our own child that we ought to naturally care for. So our gradually acquired, accumulated and ever-changing BMIs want to establish the rule of our real selves, naturally brilliant light of infinite grace, arut-jyōthi, thus leading the other astray non-sadhak BMIs also towards the innumerable yet ultimate pathways towards mukti, moksha, nirvana that we are privileged to have recognized, so as to enable them also to experience ourself, the ineffable and transcendental reality. Yes, the light of infinite grace, or arut-jyōthi, is so very critical whenever we talk about vallalār. In fact, it's included as an epithet for himself. Right? So as sadhaks, our BMIs should help the astray non-sadhak bodies, minds and intellects as well. Right? To redirect them from mere arthā and kama to dharmā and moksha as well, the other puruśārthās. Because we are privileged to have recognized that we should not be selfish and retain it only for ourselves. The best is for our children, right? And who's our children? The universe. So whatever is the best that we have realized and recognized, let's share it with all, so as to enable them to experience ourselves, the ineffable and transcendental reality, whatever may be our temporary BMI's shortcomings. Our self, by its very nature, ought to forgive them. Oh, my dearest Pappaji Master, our self thirstily hankers to have an inseparable union with you. Oh, my dearest Pappaji Master. That's this song. Appā, நான் வேண்டுதல் கேட்டருள் புரிதல் வேண்டும். ஆருயிர்களுக்கெல்லாம் நான் அன்பு செய்ய வேண்டும். எப்பாரும் எப்பதமும் எங்கனும் நான் சென்றே எந்தை நினதத்தொரு புகழை எம்பிதல் வேண்டும். செப்பாத மேநிலை மேற் சுத்த சிவமார்க்கம் திகழ்ந்தோங்க அருட்-ஜோதி செலுத்தியதில் வேண்டும். தப்பேது நான் செய்யனும் நீ பொறுத்தல் வேண்டும். தலைவா பப்பாஜி மாஸ்டர், நின்ன பிரியாத நிலை உமையும் வேண்டுவனே. Universal fraternity, of universal right, of oneness, of soulful love and compassion of all living beings, souls, that is, real selves, as revealed and flourished by arut-perun-jyōthi rāmalinga vallalār. Arut-perun-jyōthi rāmalinga vallalār has been introduced to the English-speaking public too through a lot of English translations of his works and his life history. Super Saint Rāmalinga lived in Tamil Nadu, Bharat, in the 19th century. He revealed the universal divine aspiration of universal fraternity. He lived his universal divine aspiration, his attainments, chiefly the embodied immortality, are the result of his compassion and his compassionate, service-oriented, spiritually exalted Jnana Yoga. Yes, he led a Jnana Yogi's life path. He lived in the midst of poor people, healing their ailments and teaching them the principles of a universal path of absolute purity and soulful compassion. Shuddha Sanmargam, a happy combo of compassionate service to fellow beings, which ensures an exalted and super consciously evolved spiritual experience. He laid an unusually equal emphasis on both these seemingly divergent engines, balancing a tight rope walk. Compassionate service and the Jnana Yoga, Jnana Marga of knowing who we really are. Because the service cannot be to the real self. The real self doesn't need any service, either you or me. What may need service are the bodies, minds, and intellects of others, which may not have been as capable or as well endowed as our bodies, minds, and intellects. We might be stronger and healthier than somebody, so help them. We might be richer than somebody, so help them. We might be more intelligent than somebody, so help them. Not in a condescending attitude, but because they are our children. We have created them in our universe. So it's our duty to do that. And it's our privilege and honor to do that. Doesn't mean we would be happy seeing them. The fact that they exist, that's a shame to us actually, that our children are suffering all these things, poverty or illiteracy or going hungry without dinner to bed every day after day, night after night. It's not nice, right? Is this how we take care of our children? Would we let our biological children go to hell like that? No. So these seemingly divergent engines of spirituality and compassionate service was brought together on a tight rope walk. Even though they seem to be contrasting requirements, both were adhered to by Rāmalinga, the pillai. On the contrary, in fact, he insisted that both of these missions or paths would grow together, aiding each other. Shuddha Sanmargam is not a new religion, but it gathered together the best from all the existing religions, be it the so-called Hinduism, the name given by the British to Sanatana Dharma, be it Sikhism or Jainism, Buddhism, be it Christianity, Islam, whatever. The Parsi religion, because the Parsis were here by then already, right? Zoroastrianism, whatever these religions might be, he took the best out of each one of them. For example, from the Jains, he took the aspect of being friendly to all animals, never to eat meat. In fact, one of his most important constructions, arut-perun-jyōthi mandir, is one which does not allow meat eaters to walk inside. It allows people of all religions, all castes, all genders, doesn't matter. But if you eat meat, you can't go there. So something that even the Jains didn't do, he went that far by taking one of their best practices and adding it to the Sanmarga that he brought about of arut-jyōthi. From the Buddhists, the Sangam aspect. And from the Hindus, the Bhakti aspect, etc. So it can go on and on. From the Christians, the service aspect. And from the Muslims, the aspect of not having a sectarian behavior, of casteism, etc. So he packed all of the best of all, the cream, and just like how America was made out of the best brains from around the world, and that's the reason for their economic success, the same way here was somebody, vallalār, who brought together the best out of every religion. But he always kept saying that the Shuddha Sanmargam that he began is just a pathway. Just like Sanatana Dharma is not also a religion, our eternal way of life that has always been the mainstay in Bharat. It's that, as well as vallalār, Shuddha Sanmargam, are not new religions. In fact, are not at all religions. But the Shuddha Sanmargam wants one not to be confined within the limits of any one religion, as that's a kind of imprisonment too. Being locked up in a particular religion. Get the best of all the worlds. Do we eat only one type of cuisine? No. You eat Thai food, you eat Italian food, you eat Mughalai food, you eat the Bharatiya food. Even though you might have issues with the Chinese, you eat Chinese food, you eat Korean food, you eat all kinds of food, right? Continental, American, if there's something called really American food which is still left out, right? So if you can enjoy cuisines from different parts of the world, why not religions from different parts of the world? Because if you're just tied to one religion, it's like imprisonment. You're not getting the best of all worlds, right? You're not getting the best of all of human evolution. So, but to reach high spiritual realms, shedding or dissolving all the differences of caste, creed, religion, nationality, language, etc., and to experience the ultimate reality, it dissuades, yes, vallalār's path, sanmarga, shuddha sanmarga, pure, auspicious pathway, dissuades one from engaging in disputes. Your religion is better than mine, my religion is better than yours. Always this tug of war. No, it dissuades one from engaging in disputes on the superiority of one religion over another. Spiritual experience cannot be confined within the limits of any one religion. And hence, one's mind ought to soar high, transcending sectarian aspects of one's religion. One should develop an harmonized outlook based on an unbiased study of all religions and philosophies, thus understanding that they coordinate and complement each other in seeking the ultimate reality which defies the discursive thought and comes to be realized only by Shuddha Sanmarga, the best from all the religions, the spiritual experience of the 17th level of Shuddha Shiva Turyatita, the summit supermind. The causes of religious discord were also discussed in great detail by vallalār, because he wanted to ensure that there's no more religious discord. So he had to understand what is the reason why religious discord is there. Because religions all came to be for a particular righteous purpose. Why are they doing exactly opposite of what they were supposed to do? What went wrong? What is the cause for these people who are following different religions fighting with each other? So the religious setup, like the other divisive institutions, anything which divides, somebody else will come and rule. In fact, even if there's no division, they will come and divide so that they can rule, right? That's the divide and rule policy, right? So the religious setup, like the other divisive institutions of caste, creed, and so on, causes seclusion. You separate, I separate, which is fundamentally a hindrance, a blockage, a vigna to be removed by Vigneshwara, right? So anything which divides causes seclusion, which is fundamentally a hindrance to the soulful compassion. You say, okay, he belongs to my religion, to my language, to my nationality, therefore I will serve him. This person does not belong, so I will not. Or if you are masculinist or so-called feminist, you serve only your gender. This ridiculous, right? Because the real self doesn't have gender, doesn't have caste, doesn't have religion, doesn't have language. So everybody needs to be served, right? Whoever requires service, irrespective of what they belong to. Because once they belong to something and not to something else, they've already caused a division and seclusion and every other negativity which comes out of it. So it's fundamental, the seclusion, first of all division and therefore seclusion, is fundamentally a hindrance to the soulful compassion and universal fraternity, the brotherhood or sisterhood. Many are the instances in the world history of animosity growing between societies, races, and nations due to this seclusion, at least mentally, if not physically, through violence, which is also happening every now and then, right? This animosity has had many a time forced people to take weapons against each other and put themselves to untold sufferings, religious tolerance. But Vivekananda went beyond that. Why do we need to tolerate somebody, right? Vallalār was just before that, a precursor. Because religious tolerance, both in the national and international level, remains an ideal. But here we have to go not only to religious tolerance, but beyond religious tolerance to the oneness of all, to recognize that we are one soul. Natural human sympathy and love should not be hampered by carrying religious individuality to the extent of seclusion and resultant animosity. Quite apart from such dogmatic religious beliefs, all human beings are brothers and sisters. In fact, humanity knows no innate differences. Between the inmates, there's no innate difference. There's no inherent difference. There's no genuine difference. It's all superficial. Differences are superficial. The oneness is what is the inner core, the reality. Differences are fleeting, temporal, changing. That's the unity in diversity. So all human beings have the same right to live, whether they are men or women, boys or girls, maintaining their individuality and at the same time loving each other. This universal siblinghood, what's normally called as brotherhood or sisterhood, you don't want to distinguish even between those two groups. Biological differences matter only in the bedroom or in some public bathrooms. So the universal siblinghood, world fraternity is stressed by our super saint Rāmalinga vallalār as the chief ideal of the universal divine aspiration. Shuddha Sanmargam, to be preached for the ultimate reality. The Supreme Lord is one arut-perun-jyōthi. He is the Father and the Mother. A single word, He is the parent of all that is. Human, animal, plant life, whatever it be. This is amply testified by all of His appeals to our self as the Supreme Lord in today's wonderful song to be sung by VasanthiMā. Appā, நான் வேண்டுதல் கேட்டு. Pappaji Master, VasanthiMā.
மைக்கு
கொடுக்குறேன்.
பா சா பா சா கருவுற்ற நாள் முதலாக கருவுற்ற நாள் முதலாக உன் பாதமே காண்பதற்கு கருவுற்ற நாள் முதலாக உன் பாதமே காண்பதற்கு உருகிற்று என் உள்ளமும் நானும் கிடந்து அளந்து விட்டொழிந்தேன். திருவுற்றியூரா திருவாலவாயா திருவாரூர ஒரு பற்றிலாமையும் கண்டு இறங்காய் கச்சி ஏகம்பனே. அப்பா நான் வேண்டுதல் கேட் அருள் புரிதல் வேண்டும். அப்பா நான் வேண்டுதல் கேட்டு அருள் புரிதல் வேண்டும். அப்பா நான் வேண்டுதல் கேட்டு அருள் புரிதல் வேண்டும். ஆருயிர்கட்கெல்லாம் நான் அன்பு செயல் வேண்டும். அப்பா நான் வேண்டுதல் கேட்டு அருள் புரிதல் வேண்டும். ஆருயிர்கட்கெல்லாம் நான் அன்பு செயல் வேண்டும். ஆருயிர்கட்கெல்லாம் நான் அன்பு செயல் வேண்டும். எப்பாரும் எப்பதமும் எப்பாரும் எப்பதமோ எங்கனும் நான் சென்றே. எப்பாரும் எப்பதமும் எங்கனும் நான் சென்றே. எப்பாரும் எப்பதமும் எங்கனும் நான் சென்றே. எப்பாரும் எப்பதமும் எங்கனும் நான் சென்றேன். எப்பாரும் எப்பதமும் எங்கனும் நான் சென்றேன். எந்தை நீனதருள் புகழை இயம்பிடல் வேண்டும். எந்தை நீனதருள் புகழை இயம்பிடல் வேண்டும். அப்பா நான் வேண்டுதல் கேட்டு அருள் புரிதல் வேண்டும். ஆருயிர்கட்கெல்லாம் நான் அன்பு செயல் வேண்டும். ஆருயிர்கட்கெல்லாம் நான் அன்பு செயல் வேண்டும். சிப்பாத மேல் நிலை மேல் சுத்த சிவமார்க்கம். செப்பாத மேல் நிலை மேல் சுத்த சிவமார்க்கம். செப்பாத மேல் நிலை மேல் சுத்த சிவமார்க்கம். செப்பாத மேல் நிலை மேல் சுத்த சிவமார்க்கம். திகழ்ந்தோங்க அருள் ஜோதி செலுத்திடல் வேண்டும். திகழ்ந்தோங்க அருள் ஜோதி செலுத்திடல் வேண்டும். தப்பேது நான் பொறுத்தல் வேண்டும் தப்பேது நான் செய்யினோம் நீ பொறுத்தல் வேண்டும் தப்பேது நான் செய்யினோம் நீ பொறுத்தல் வேண்டும் தப்பேது நான் செய்யினும் நீ பொறுத்தல் வேண்டும் தப்பேது நான் செய்யினோ நீ பொறுத்தல் வேண்டும் தப்பேது நான் செய்யினோ நீ பொறுத்தல் வேண்டும் தப்பேது நான் செய்யினோ நீ பொறுத்தல் வேண்டும் தலைவா நீனே பிரியாது நீலமையும் வேண்டுவனே தலைவா நீனே பிரியாது நீலமையும் வேண்டுவனே அப்பா நான் வேண்டுதல் கேட் அருள் புரிதல் வேண்டும் ஆருயிர்கட்கெல்லாம் நான் அன்பு செயல் வேண்டும் அப்பா நான் வேண்டுதல் கேட் அருள் புரிதல் வேண்டும் அருள் புரிதல் வேண்டும் அருள் புரிதல் வேண்டும்.
Super, VasanthiMā, super. VasanthiMā, super. And the super saint, Rāmalinga vallalār, gives practical suggestions to put this ideal universal fraternity that VasanthiMā sang about just now into practice. Because it's not just theory. It has to be in practice as well, right? How do we put this brotherhood and sisterhood, what we call as universal fraternity, into practice? Brotherhood and sisterhood not only amongst humans but of all life. How do we put it into practice? Soulful love for each other may be expressed through compassion and service. Compassionate service to all human beings. Jiva karunya olukam. Jiva, life. Karunya, compassionate. Olukam, the way you express that, is the only way to attain the ultimate reality, is the assertion of Rāmalinga pillai, vallalār. Differences of religion, caste, color, creed, language, nations, and many others can go on. We don't want those, so there's no point in again and again recollecting them. But none of these differences should come in the way of this Jiva Karunya Seva or service, as it does in the case of Western missionaries. Because they say, if you do this by joining our religion, then we will do this for you, be it education or healthcare or whatever, or money, help, all only if you're ready to convert, right? No, that's not the real intention. You heard of that great instance of the Swami, who was once upon a time the head of the Ramakrishna mission, and an interviewer was asking him many questions, and one of the questions in the long interview was, how many schools does the mission run? And after some thought, he is the chief of the entire Ramakrishna mission, and he says, gives a particular number. And then later, before publication, the interviewer wants to check all these figures, so he tries to validate with some of the information that's already available online, and then figures out that whatever the mission chief told, There are 100 times that many schools being run, 100 times that many hospitals being run. Even the chief of the mission doesn't know how much of service they are doing in the education, health sector, etc. What the left hand does, the right hand should not know. What the right hand does, left hand should not know. Because service just comes involuntarily, naturally. How there are so many involuntary bodily functions for us. The heart keeps beating. Does it keep saying, you didn't tell me thank you for my last heartbeat? Already I've beaten 10 times, you tell me 10 times thank you. Does it ask you to do that? That would be stupid, right? They're all part of the same organism, the individual, right? So we have to have such an organic behavior. That's the true spirituality as opposed to religion, right? So nation should not come in the way of this, all these differences, be it leave alone religious differences, even national differences. India wants to help a country, be it Pakistan, be it a friendly country. No. As long as they need genuine help and we are capable of doing it, we should go ahead and do it, right? So that's the message of vallalār, the Jiva Karunya service. As it does in the case of Western missionaries, no, not like that. The right of everyone to love and to be loved, to love and to be loved. It's a right. And to love is a duty. So, and in what way we love them? Not some kind of crush kind of a love. Love as a sibling, love as a child, love as a parent shouldn't be at stake. Because these duties and rights, they cannot be at stake. Besides, he insists on practicing jnana yoga, concentration and attunement of our mind towards contemplation of the Almighty, arut-perun-jyōthi, who enlightens everyone before the grace presence of the flame of the lit lamp of true wisdom, satya jnana deepam. Jnana yoga intensifies and increases one's potentiality and ability to serve compassionately. If our religious practices, our sadhana doesn't take us to compassionate service, then obviously something is wrong with the sadhana that we are doing. The kindling force of service makes easy the inflow of inner grace. Service, grace, space, all these are rhyming, not as a coincidence, my dear friends. The kindling force of service makes easy the inflow of inner grace. Again, third time I want to tell you, because this is so beautiful. The kindling force of service makes easy the inflow of inner grace. So the inner grace helps in service. Similarly, the service helps in better flow of the inner grace as well. So this in turn helps opening of unknown realms, soul consciousness through which spiritual realizations are possible. The urge of divine worship through compassionate Jiva Karunya service, life compassion service to all fellow beings, human or otherwise, is the impelling force behind all of vallalār's appeals to our own real self, the almighty arut-perun-jyōthi, the grace magnificent light. That this was heard and granted to vallalār is obvious from his declarations in other portions of the same Thiru-Arutpa, from which today's song of VasanthiMā was also extracted. For example, in the same sixth book, second part, 36th poem, 8th stanza, not the first stanza what she sang, vallalār claims, our real self, you have given the scepter of grace and ordained that we may rule with the light of grace. Our real self, you have given the scepter of grace and ordained that we may rule with the light of grace, combining the triple ideals of soul-melting devotion, bhakti yoga, super-conscious spirituality, jnana yoga, and compassionate service, karma yoga, vallalār experienced communion with our true self as the Almighty Lord and thereby attained superior powers, what are known as siddhis, and embodied immortality as a Jivan Mukta, one who is realized even while living within the physical body. Exactly for 50 years he lived within a physical human body, and ever after that, for the 147 years after that, he's been living as a light, and that light is being experienced by so many of his devotees. Vallalār proposed to displace the rule of power with the rule of omni-grace. We talk of omnipotence, omniscience, omnipresence. Vallalār talks of omni-grace. That arul, which is present everywhere, is the omni-grace. The rule of power has to be replaced with the rule of grace. And what kind of grace? That grace which is present all over, everywhere. Not a single space, particle left out of that. A remarkable change indeed, making it felt through a zealous mission of spreading universal spirituality and service, which would render possible the coexistence of all possible religions, those which already exist today and which might keep coming over in the future as well, despite their obvious differences. Superficial, right? Differences are in rituals, differences are in philosophies, but the underlying core is the same. Letting thereby the people in the world at large live in peace and amity, discovering ample time and a conducive atmosphere to not only recognize but also fulfill their higher spiritual needs. Rāmalinga Vallalār calls this transformation the rule of grace light, arut-perun-jyōthi. Every individual can be made to embody the manifestation of omni-grace, omnipresent grace, in his or her very personality, that is in the body, mind, and intellect toolkit. Once manifested, the omni-grace is experienced by our bodies, minds, and intellects, BMIs, as the dazzling light of grace with its deluging blaze. Grace with blaze. Another rhyming word. I love it. So much which cannot be conveyed through prose can be conveyed through poems. The poetic world, the song world of VasanthiMā is so much more beautiful. This means an increased amount of mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual power, all the four dimensions. To what? To create, construct, preserve, unify, and sustain what? Dharmā. Dharma has to be created, dharma has to be constructed, dharma has to be preserved, dharma has to be unified, dharma has to be sustained. And dharmo rakshati rakshitaha. Who protects this dharma is protected themselves. But that alone is not sufficient, right? As well as to destroy the Shiva Tattva. You already saw the creative Brahma Tattva, the preserving Vishnu Tattva, and now the destructive and disintegrative Tattva for what? Adharma, the unrighteousness, right? That which is not our duty. Hence, this path is the path of grace light. Vallalār himself was an embodiment of supremely great compassion. It's not just he's telling you to be compassionate, me to be compassionate. No, he lived that example in his own life and thereby experienced our real self not his own real self, because his self is our self, yourself and myself as well, right? So he, vallalār, experienced our real self as the supreme grace light. So that supreme grace light doesn't belong only to a so-called vallalār person. No, it's yours, mine, all of ours. That's what he called as arut-perun-jyōthi. Arul, grace, perum, great, and jyōthi, light. That is the light within the light within the light. You see this? What's happening? Yes, just the beauty of this light within a light within the light. Just meditate upon that. Such a deeply inner perception of the triple characteristics of light. And this is before Einstein said E is equal to mc squared, where c is the speed of light, 3 into 10 power 8 meter per second in vacuum, right? So, this deep inner perception of the triple characteristics of light, within light or life light, the golden light and the white light, which conceals the reality threadbare. The last ever entity is the white light, which of course consists of all of the Vibgyor colors, the 7 colors, the 7 swaras and the 7 chakras. They all have a correlation. Sa-ri, ga-ma, pa-da, ni. Violet, indigo, blue, green, yellow, orange, red. Right? Mooladhara, swadhisthana, manipura, anahata, vishuddha, agnya, sahasrara has made vallalār live forever in a transfigured divine body. That's what I talked about. Vallalār's 147-year-old transformation from physicality to light. E is equal to mc squared. Appā, the general or special theory of relativity. Albert Einstein, much before him. Even after the disappearance of vallalār's mortal coil, continues to live in the transfigured divine body of light. By his presence and teachings, he tries to guide this world of ours in an unending path of love and grace, specified by him as the deathless grand light. May the world be awakened and heed his teachings in order to attain peace in the international arena and within national arenas too, in the political, cultural and social affairs, as against the impending danger of total destruction that may be caused at any time by the slightest provocation, and as against their growing materialism, that is madness for wealth, pleasure and power, which would inevitably invite war and calamity. He wished to guide the people of the whole world in the path of grace, which is free from violence of any sort. He delivered his message of the right for integration, oneness of all souls. Actually, there's only one soul. Through soulful love, through lectures of great sermon, Maha Upadesham, through his amazing essays or Vinnappam, and heart-wrenching poems or Geetam, rendered in mellifluous style as melodious songs of grace, the Thiru Arut-pa, a short sample of which VasanthiMā gave us as a glimpse today. Vallalār insisted on universal fraternity. VasanthiMā insists on a universal fraternity. I insist on a universal fraternity. That is the siblinghood of all of us and of plants and animals as the only relation, not only amongst the people of the world, but also all other living beings. Vallalār exhorted the people to set aside all their religious differences and live in amity and peace, promoting congenial relationship with one another. Vast grace light, arut-perun-jyōthi, vast grace light, arut-perun-jyōthi, absolute, immense compassion, tani-perun-karunai, vast grace light, arut-perun-jyōthi. Rāmalinga vallalār sang, hailing our real selves, infinite strength, exalting ourself to undreamt of depths within the black holes of dark energy, Shiva and Kali, that we truly are, at the Ajna and the Sahasrara, revealing a blaze of flames in the vortices at the depths of our stabilized minds. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Jaya Guru Shiva Guru Hari Guru Ram, Jagat Guru Param Guru Sat Guru Sham. Mata Shri Guru Dhyana Stotram Vishwasara Tantram. Shri Sarva Dharma Swarupaya Sarva Sampradaya Swarupaya Sarva Guru Rishi Matru Pitru Deva Devi Swarupaya Shri 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 Ramakrishna Paramahamsa Sameta Shri 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 Rāmalinga pillai vallalār Namo Namaha. Jai Gurudev. Namaskaram VasanthiMā. Namaskaram one and all. On this Good Friday, the Diamond Jubilee wedding anniversary of VasanthiMā's parents and my maternal grandparents, śrīmati valli-bāi-ammāl and Sri ārcot paśu-pati venkat-āchala-pati, VasanthiMā is delighted to present to you a song frequently sung by her dad, my beloved grandpa, to whom I owe all of my spiritual foundation in its entirety. Another personal connection is that my dad, whom I used to fondly call Pappaji Master, and the composer of today's song, vallalār, were both blessed with the divine vision of the principle of su-brahmanyā, nothing but our own valor and courage to muster the support of all our passionate aggression to defeat our inertial lethargy and laziness, thus being endowed with the first three of the four puruśārthās in the form of dharmā or veil, arthā or devayāni, and kāma or valli, and finally seeking the fourth puruśārthā of moksha or liberation from the seemingly never-ending cycle of birth and death. This principle of su-brahmanyā, whose vision both my Pappaji master and Guruji vallalār had, is centered at every one of our swadhisthana chakra, eagerly waiting to be unraveled. A global dispeller of darkness, Vishwa Guru, Venerable Thiru, enlightening, grace showering, arut-prakāsha, Honorable Philanthropist vallalār, an occupant of our conscious space, chid-ambara, and thus an ecstatic emblem, Rāmalinga, manifested himself on our beautiful planet Earth. Yes, I'm talking of Vishwaguru Thiru Arul-Prakasha vallalār chid-ambaram rāmalingam, a global dispeller of darkness, venerable, enlightening, grace-showering, honorable philanthropist, an occupant of our conscious space, and thus an ecstatic emblem, manifested himself on our beautiful planet Earth, of course in the timeless Punya Bhumi of Bharat, in the humanity paralleling ancient culture of Tamil Nadu. 198 years ago, yes, just less than 200, he transformed himself into an eternal light body. 147 years back, yes, just 3 years to go for the 150th. So we will shortly, in fact in a couple of years, have the privilege of celebrating his bicentennial Jayanti, that is the 200th birthday, on October the 5th of 2023. And the 150th anniversary of his specially relativistic enlightenment, aka Albert Einstein, general theory of relativity, special theory of relativity. So the 150th anniversary of vallalār's specially relativistic enlightenment, aka Einstein, on January 30th, 2024. As some of you might recall, vallalār was directly referred to in our very channel recently. Yes, the śrīmati Vasanthikumari Sampath channel, just about a month back, right in the middle of the song Eppadi Paadinaro of Kaviyogi Maharishi Sri Shuddhananda Bharati, rendered of course by VasanthiMā. vallalār was one amongst the many towering spiritual singers that Shuddhanandaji wanted to emulate. That's why he said Eppadi Paadinaro, and there we refer to vallalār. But today's song, on the other hand, is not written on vallalār, but written by him. Appā naan véNDudal, in pūrvi-kalyāNi ragam, by arut-perun-jyōthi rāmalinga vallalār. It's in pūrvi-kalyāNi ragam, which means something which happens even before our progress, that is preceding the progress, that kind of a melody. And what's the rhythm to go with it? Cāpu talam, that which gives its own mudra. Cāpu talam is actually, whatever this song is, appā naan véNDudal, is actually the first stanza of vallalār's virally popular Thiru Arutpa, Pa referring to Padal, or Arut referring to Arul or grace, Thiru referring to something that is holy, auspicious. So Thiru Arutpa is the short form for Thiru Arul Padal. So it's from that book. In fact, there are many books to that volume of Thiru Arutpa. So what we are talking about today in the song that VasanthiMā is going to sing and which I'm going to give a discourse on is in the 6th book, part 2, 35th poem in the English version. Similarly, I don't know what exactly it is in the Tamil version. Maybe the numbers are the same. But what most singers of this song themselves don't realize, leave alone the listeners like us, even the singers, many of them just sing it because they know it or they've learned it, but they don't realize is that this simple sounding song, it's not in ancient Tamil, which is very difficult to understand even for today's Tamilians, but it is a very simple sounding song, but it's actually, and in fact entirely, an appeal from our body, mind and intellect toolkit, what I call as the B for body, M for mind, and I for intellect, BMI toolkit, because I'll keep referring to this quite frequently, as I've done in the past discourses, throughout this discourse, because it's very, very critical here. So what most singers, as I said, of this song themselves don't realize, and in fact it's true for most of vallalār songs, is that the simple sounding song is actually, and in fact entirely, an appeal from our BMI toolkit to the real us. What's the real us? Namely the self, what we call as the ātmā, or the soul. Our BMI toolkit addresses us as Pappaji master. Our BMI toolkit, our body, mind and intellect, addresses the real us, the Atma, as Pappaji master and as our own father, as we are indeed the real us, the self, the Atma, the real us. We are indeed the creators every moment and recreators every other moment of each of our own universes, which of course include our BMIs too. Universe means the universal set. There's nothing other than the universe. So obviously the universes that we create every moment and recreate every other moment is of course including our body, our mind and our intellect, that is the B, M and the I. Albeit temporarily between birth and death, just visiting this planet. Our BMIs, body, minds and intellects, continue requesting our self, our real self, our true self. What do the body, mind and intellect request? They say, let our humble appeal be heard by you and granted. Yes, these are toolkits. The body, mind and intellect are just the servants of the self for a short duration. These are thrown away, and in another life we get another set of servants, the body, mind and the intellect. So our BMIs continue requesting their master, their Pappaji master, let our humble appeal be heard by you and granted. Despite being temporary tools, the body, mind and intellect of genuine seekers like you and me, sadhaks as we call ourselves, like us, are clearly understood, well taken care of and utilized efficiently and effectively. Yes, I'm not only the body, I'm not only the mind, I'm not only the intellect, I am the radiant Atman, soft, delicious, white, pure and beautiful as the coconut fruit inside the hard coconut shell. Ride on us as you'd ride on your vahana, we say to ourselves. Na deho, na mano, na buddhi, satchidananda atmoham, eternal as I am, and ephemeral as these temporary tools of body, mind and intellect are. I still know that if I understand them well, if I understand the body, mind and intellect well, and I take care of all three of them properly and utilize them efficiently and effectively, then there is no way in which these can be obstacles in my spiritual journey. They would in fact become my tools which would help me accelerate my journey towards the goal of life, mukti, moksha, nirvana. So what I'm saying here is that despite being temporary tools, the body, mind and intellect of genuine seekers or sadhaks like you and me are clearly understood, well taken care of and utilized efficiently and effectively. So once you do all these three things, what happens? Our BMI want to soulfully love all other BMIs. So your BMI loves my BMI loves yours. In fact, not just those of us watching this video, but also all other human beings, nay, all other BMIs with a sixth sense. We have these five senses: sight, hearing, smelling, tasting, and touching. The sixth sense is the extrasensory perception. Anything which is having that sixth sense, or arivu as we call them, nay, all living beings, not just human. And for what? Just love doesn't mean much. Expressing that love in terms of service and serving all those other BMIs, be it human or not, through this love, compassion, motherliness or fatherliness, recognizing our parenthood and that the entire universe is our children. So we, the seekers, BMIs, want to go places. Yes, the body want to go places, the mind wants to go places, the intellect wants to go places. For all of us seekers, where does it want to go? To every nook and corner of this amazing planet that's been bestowed upon us. We had the joy of going to 46 countries and almost all of the Indian states. But that's not what I'm talking about here. No. Not merely as tourists embarking upon sightseeing, but to musically glorify ourself. Yes, our real self. Yes, with an uppercase, even though our self might be a single word, the S in between is uppercase, talking about not the body, mind and intellect, but the atma, the real self, the soul. And why do we want to go? Why does this body, mind and intellect want to go around? To glorify ourself, the real self, to sing its praises and to demonstrate our real self's selfless grace. Our real self's selfless grace, as abundantly and obviously evident as space. Selfless grace as abundantly and obviously evident as space. The fifth of the Panchabhutas, the Akasha, Gagana element, yet invisible to the senses. Yes, space is so abundant and so obvious. Without space, kala, we can't do anything. But it's invisible to our senses. We can't see space, we can't hear space, we can't smell space, we can't taste space, we can't touch space, feel it, but we know it's there. In fact, that's all that's there all around us and within us as well, the inner space. So similarly, our real self's selfless grace is also like this space. So how do our BMI want to show off? Yes, showing off is not always bad, my dear friends. It depends on what you're showing off and for what purpose, why you're doing it, right? And how you're doing it. All that matters. So indeed, by engaging in compassionate service through the recognition that the entire creation is our own child that we ought to naturally care for. So we don't need to be taught love, sharing, caring, and compassion. All of this come to us naturally once we realize that we are creating our own universe every moment, and therefore it's our child. Does a mother or a father need to be taught that they need to love their child, that they need to share with their child, that they need to care for their child, that they need to be compassionate to their child and to provide for all its genuine requirements? No, it comes naturally to us parents, right? Same way, it's not just as a biological parent for one or two or a few children, but for the entire universe, because every moment we are creating our own universe, and every other moment we are recreating our own universe. And recreate is a wonderful word because it's used for recreation or enjoyment or joy or something, as a play, as a leela as well. That's how you convert your kriya to karma, or the other way around, the karma to the kriya, right? So by engaging in compassionate service, our BMI want to show off our self's grace. Indeed, by engaging in these kinds of motherly or fatherly activities, not just as an act, but recognizing that's the truth, through the recognition that the entire creation is our own child that we ought to naturally care for. Our gradually acquired, accumulated, and ever-changing BMIs want to establish the rule of our real self's naturally brilliant light of infinite grace. Arut-Jyōthi. What is this light of grace? And that too, how much of grace? Infinite grace. This will keep repeating again and again, not only in this song and its discourse, but in most of Vallalār's work, because he wanted to remove this concept of this religion's God versus that religion's God, because he saw that religions were becoming the cause for actual human conflicts, whereas in reality they were introduced to avoid conflicts. By the way they were being practiced, it's becoming the opposite of what their intentions were. So our gradually acquired, accumulated, and changing, not now once in a while, but ever-changing body, mind, and intellect, isn't it? This body has been gradually acquired, accumulated, and is always changing. You know how many cells of our body die off and how many new cells are generated almost every minute. So we are gradually acquiring that through the food we eat. Same way the mind, through the emotions that we play around with, and the intellect with the thoughts that we experiment with. So these are all, the body, mind, and intellect are gradually acquired entities, accumulated. We started off so small, as an infant, a newborn, in the care of a neonatologist. But now see how big we have become in terms of height, in terms of weight. Some people are ashamed of it even. So all of this gradually acquired, accumulated,